welcome back to DajibanLife. Hopefully you guys can hear me over all the truck noises. I am currently at a truck stop, but I'm here to show you my overall ride height. Just from eyeballing it, this is on relatively level ground. Just from eyeballing it, it looks like the front is a little bit higher than the back. And so that's a big no-no in my book. I do have my tape measure out, so I'm gonna go ahead and measure from the body to the ground. So from here, from the ground to the body, it looks like just about, I'm gonna call that 13 and a half, 14 inches, around there, between 13 and 14 inches, right? And in the front, we are looking at about 14 inches. So definitely, it looks like the rear is about a half inch to an inch lower than the front. So it's kind of got a reverse rake, and just eyeballing it, it kind of looks like that as well. And that is a no-no. That's not good. So it looks like what I'm gonna do today is I'm going to be swapping out the spring spacers that I have on there at the top. So it seems like, you know, instead of choosing the low life, it seems like the low life is choosing me. You know what I mean? Every time I try to get out, they pull me back in. As far as the Agoura system goes, it didn't give me the right height that I thought I would get from that. I thought I would get at least an inch or two. But I mean, obviously that's probably been negated by the shim kit that I put on there, which I didn't have in my last fan. And also the flip kit itself is a little bit thicker than the other one that I used, the Western chassis one. And so whatever ride height that I did gain, I probably lost. So it was a net zero effect. And so the rear is pretty much the same height as it was on my old van, which is a bummer. But at least the setup is it's more legit, obviously, right? It's not so jerry-rigged, if you can call it that. I mean, I think the setup I had was fine. It worked fine. It's disappointing, but at least now the ride is stiffer. It's a lot stiffer. I think it's settled a little bit, so it's not as stiff as when I first installed it. When I first installed it, it felt like an absolute BMW, like the king of cars, right? But now it's a little bit less stiff, but it's still, you know, it's still pretty stiff. And also, I think lowering the front is going to be a good idea, because the slip yoke, as I showed you in the last week or a couple weeks ago, is pretty far up into the transmission, and I'm hoping that lowering the front down will back that out a little bit, because in my old van, there was I think that when you lowered the front, the slip yoke would back out, and when you raised the front, it would slide in more. I think that's the way it worked. I could be wrong. I guess I'll find out. If the slip yoke goes in any more than it is now, it's gonna bind and it's gonna bottom out. So that's not good. But hopefully, I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to take a look at the drive shaft right now. But from theory, right, it should back out a little bit if I lower the front. Alright, so I got the passenger side all apart. Got the spacer off, and I'll be replacing it with the OEM one. This one's actually aftermarket. It's made by Moog. I replaced this. For some reason it's a little bit smashed in right here, but whatever, you know, should be fine. But you can see the difference in thickness if we put them like this, right? Damn it. Well, whatever, you can see the difference. This one is quite a bit shorter. That looks like actually more than an inch maybe. But anyway, putting this one back on should lower it down in the front a little bit, and hopefully that'll solve my slip yoke issues, is what I'm hoping. I also welded the washers together. But yeah, let me go ahead and finish all this up on both sides and then show you the results. And I'm probably going to drive around on that setup for about, you know, a couple hundred miles, maybe, you know, 300-400 miles, and wait for it to really settle before I do an alignment. Alright, there she is. Swapped out the spring spacer thing, isolator, and looks a lot better just visually. I'll go ahead and measure the fender, and also this is just like fresh, right? So I haven't driven it around yet, so it still needs to settle. So it'll probably be a little bit even lower. Might be too low at this point. But like I said, you know, I didn't choose the low life. The low life chose me. So let's see here what the ruler says. So we're about, I'd call that 13 inches to the fender. And then over here, wow, it's really windy. On the back, it's just about 13 and a half to 14 inches, somewhere around there. A little bit less than 14 inches, I would say, to the body. So that's pretty much perfect. Let's check on this side as well. This side looks like 14, between 14 and a half and 15 inches. It's probably like 14 to 14 and a half. And then on his side here, it's about 13. So, yeah, it's about an inch, half an inch to an inch lower on the front than it is in the rear, which is perfect. But like I said, once it settles, it might be a little bit lower in the front. So when I fit bigger tires under the fenders, it's possible I could get some rubbing, because these tires are 30 inches. It's 29 and a half inches diameter. And so the two 45, 75, 17s that I want to get are 32 inches in diameter. So it's a 2-inch growth. So basically what that means is 1 inch of it would be towards the ground, right? So it'll just raise the vehicle about an inch. But the other inch will creep up into the fender space here, right? So that means it's gonna fill this gap by about an inch. And right now, that gap is it's pretty small. It's about an inch to the tire, right? So I guess I could pull it. I knocked the fender out a little bit with the hammer, so you can kind of see it's flaring out a little bit now. So I guess I could do that a little bit more when I get the bigger tires, and just flare them out so that it'll tuck, the tire will tuck under. I can also add a little bit of negative camber, because we do have camber control with the control arms on these vans. So I could maybe just, you know, give it like -1 degree or something like that, so that when the van comes down, the suspension compresses, the tire will tuck inwards instead of just straight up and down and not hit the fender. But for now, I think that looks pretty good. And I don't think I'm gonna space out the rear wheels this time. I'm just gonna leave them where they are, because my wheel spacers are 1.5 inches, so they would stick out to like here. So I think that would be way too much. Like, it'd be beyond the body, you know what I mean? And usually that's just another failure point, a possible failure point. So I don't want to risk it. I'm already doing enough to this van that's not safe. So, you know, might as well minimize the risks. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. I think that's pretty much where I'm going to leave the ride height. I like it. It's looking nice. And the fatter tires will make it look extra mean. Really fill out those wheel wells. And yeah. So that's going to be it for this episode. Just me just looking for the right ride height, and I think I got it now. Hopefully when it settles, it doesn't settle too much. Maybe just half an inch or so, you know, at max, so that it's not too low in the front. But this is really my old setup on my old van. It's the same ride height, so it was fine, it worked. So I did have a little bit of rubbing here and there on really severe bumps, but I can probably just fix that by pulling the fenders out a little bit more as we go. Alright, well, but that's gonna be it. And I'll give you guys an update on what the actual ride height looks like once it's all settled, and probably in the next video. Alright, thanks for watching.